States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Under awards and presentations tonight, we're delighted to have Ms. Meredith Lipscomb of Malden Jenkins with us to provide a presentation of our recent audit. Ms. Lipscomb. Up here, if you like.
Good evening. My name is Meredith Lipson. I'm the partner in charge of the annual audit for the city. And I'm here to present the fiscal year 2016 audit, which was the fiscal year ended June 30, 2016. The audit was completed and financial statements filed with the State Department of Audits by the December 31st deadline, as well as filed with the Georgia Finance Officers, the Government Finance Officers Association for consideration for their Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting program. Also filed by December 31st as required. So what I wanted to do is just kind of hit some highlights from the from the June 30, 2016 audit. You all have a copy of the, well, mine looks a little bit different than yours, but the thick bound copy of your comprehensive annual financial report. And then there's also a document that I brought with me today, which we refer to as our auditor's discussion and analysis. Just highlight some of the things that we as auditors are required to communicate to you all, as well as just some summary information for the audit. But let's first look at the comprehensive annual financial report, the big thick document. Just so you'll know, you all have been presenting a document of this type for quite a few years and have been receiving the Certificate of Achievement as well. This document goes above and beyond what is required by the state. It includes a lot of introductory information, statistical information, and more detailed footnotes than is actually required by the state. So it's a lot of information. There's a lot of historical information in here. So usually what I tell people is if you don't have time to read this whole document or just not really interested in the whole document, there is a section right after our audit opinion that's the management discussion and analysis. That was written by management. It's not written by us. We do make sure that the information contained in that is consistent with our financial statements, but it's a great summary of the fiscal year and the financial activities of that year. Again, it is written by management. It was mainly written by the finance department, by Brenda and Shay. They did a great job with it. Some cities and counties have a difficult time putting all that information together, but theirs was very well done. So again, that's kind of a summary of the annual financial report, if you didn't want to read through the whole thing. Most importantly, though, our audit opinion was unmodified, which is the clean opinion, the one that you want to get. As always, the financial statements are the responsibility of management. Ours was to express an opinion on the financial statements based on our audit procedures, and again, it was an unmodified, clean opinion. As I mentioned, there's a lot of information in here, so I'd like just to kind of hit a couple of highlights. I think one of the most important things that you all look at is the general fund, because that's really the heart and soul of your operations. And if you look on page 22 and 23, you can see the balance sheet of your general fund as well as your special purpose sales tax fund, which is one of your larger funds. The general fund, and that's the income statement. Page 20 and 21 are the balance sheet of your general fund and your special purpose sales tax fund. Your general fund had approximately $3.7 million in assets, approximately $591,000 in liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, which left you with a fund balance at June 30th of approximately $3.1 million. Your sales tax fund, of course, that fund is totally earmarked for capital improvements that have previously been approved and set forth in the referendum. But you had approximately $8.8 million in cash and investments in that special purpose sales tax fund. Very little in the way of liabilities. Approximately $200,000 in liabilities were really just some outstanding accruals and payables at year end. So your fund balance in your sales tax fund was approximately $8.57 million at June 30th. Just to take a look at your revenues and expenditures real quick in your general fund, on page 22 you can see you had approximately $10.475 million in revenues, expenditures of approximately $14 million. So to cover the difference in the revenues and the expenditures, you all transferred in approximately $3.35 million from the water and sewer fund and your solid waste fund to cover those general fund expenditures. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine to do that. You know, you just always have to make sure that you're leaving enough money in those water and sewer fund and solid waste fund to cover your debt service obligations. There's a budget to actual comparison on pages 25 through 27 that shows a comparison of your general fund to the original budget and your amended budget. For the most part, the revenues fell somewhat short of what you all had budgeted for the fiscal year, but then your expenditures were also below what you all had planned. So in the end, while you had a balanced budget, overall, the net change was just a couple $100,000 less than what you all had anticipated with that balanced budget. The rest of the document includes information on your water and sewer fund, your solid waste fund, your pension retirement fund, and then there's several small little special revenue funds that you have. And then there's a lot of information in the footnotes to the financial statements that back up all of the cash accounts, the investment accounts, your long-term debt. Lots of information about the pension plan. As you all remember, in the prior year, you all had to pull into this financial report your net pension liability, the difference between what you have in assets and what has been determined to be your ongoing liability out there. And that amount's going to fluctuate every year, just depending on actuarial information, changes in employees, and changes in assumptions, and definitely changes in the market. So you all, as well as all the other governments, had to pull that in as your liability. And that liability for the year ended June 30th, 2016, find that, was just over $3 million. And again, that's just the difference between your investments that you have in that plan and what the actuary has determined to be an outstanding liability going forward for the future. So you can't really look at the plan and say it's underfunded. That certainly is not the case at all. This is an accounting, I don't want to say gimmick because that's not the appropriate word, but this is an accounting way of handling the difference between those assets and the liabilities. I think if you look at it from a funding perspective, you all are just fine. Are there any other questions about this document before I move on to the other one? Anything y'all want me to talk about that I haven't? No? Okay. As I mentioned, this document, we refer to it as an auditor's discussion and analysis. A lot of the information in here is what we are required to communicate to you all under the standards that guide us. And we choose to put it in writing rather than for me to stand up here for like 30 or 40 minutes and tell you all of that information. The first few pages in here are just a little bit of information about our firm and our governmental practice, because we do have a very significant practice here in Georgia as well as in Florida and South Carolina. And then following that, we have a discussion on the financial statements. On page 5, we have an overview of the financial statements, basically telling you all that these statements are based in the same format as you all have seen in the past. There have been no really significant changes in any of the statements or the footnotes. For the first time this year, you all were required to adopt a new standard, GASB 72, which just requires some additional disclosures related to your investments, primarily the investments that you all have in your pension fund. No changes in the valuation, but just additional disclosures that are now required, and so those are included in the footnotes. On page 6 and 7 of this document, we have a couple of charts that show the sources of revenues and the uses of those revenues, your expenditures, by function and by type. The total revenues for the fiscal year were approximately $13.8 million, which is an increase over the prior year of about $12.2 million. Most significant variances in your revenues and your inflows of dollars was in your transfers. You all had significantly more amounts transferred into the general fund from water and sewer and solid waste than you have in the past. So that was really the most significant change in your revenues. The expenditures on page 7 reflect approximately $14.1 million, which is an increase of about $2.5 million over the previous year. You all had significantly more expenditures, mainly in your public safety function, as well as in public works and your general government expenditures. As you can see on the chart on the bottom of page 7, this is a 5-year comparison of your revenues and your expenditures in your general fund. And pretty much each year, you all are you have very little, variation in the change in your revenues over expenditures each year. This year, your expenditures were just slightly higher than your revenues, which resulted in a little bit of a decrease in your fund balance, around $200,000. And that's okay. That happens. Some years you have a little bit more, some years have a little bit less. But as you can see, you all do a really good job of not having a whole lot of variance from year to year, which you want. On page 8 is a graph that kind of reflects the overall strength of the city's general fund over a 5-year period. It's a comparison of the expenditures to your fund balance. And if you look at the graph on page 8, as the distance between the graph line for expenditures and fund balance becomes wider, you all end up having less leverage as you enter into the new fiscal year. Meaning, as you can see on page 8, your fund balance is approximately 22% of your annual expenditures for fiscal year 2016. For 2015, it's about 29%. So what this is telling you is that, going forward, you all have to really watch your expenditures because, as we all know, new revenue sources are hard to come by. As a matter of fact, I don't really know anybody who's stumbled upon some great new revenue sources in any of the governments we work with. So you all really have to watch those expenditures and make sure that your budget is of course balanced and that you really watch closely to continue to maintain at least the fund balance that you have. Let's see what else. Just going to kind of hit some of the highlights in here. Page 10 begins some of the required communications, things, as I mentioned, that we're required to communicate to you all. And that stretches over to page 12. And really the most important thing I want you to take from this section is the section about audit adjustments. We made a couple of audit adjustments. I want to say, I think there were like 2 or 3 audit adjustments, which is excellent. And what that means for you all is that the information that you are being given on a monthly basis to make decisions on for the city is accurate. If we were coming in and we were making, 20, 30, 40 adjustments to your funds as part of the audit process, the information that you all would have been receiving all year long on a monthly basis that you were basing your decisions on would have not been completely accurate. But you all, as I mentioned, do not have to worry about that. We only had, it was 2 or 3 adjustments at the most. So I really wanted to mention that. The finance department has done a great job making sure that everything remains balanced and balances are accurate. Page 13 is where we discuss any of the findings and recommendations that we have as part of the audit. We had no findings related to the city's audit. We did have a couple related to component units of the city, Allied Arts and the Central State Hospital Redevelopment Authority. And you're probably saying, well, why do we have to put that in our audit? Well, they're component units of the city, and because they do not issue separate standalone financial reports, they are they are only included for reporting purposes in your financial statements. So we have to mention the fact that we had some issues or findings related to those two entities. The first one that we talk about on page 13 relates to audit adjustments from the previous year not being recorded on the books of these two entities. So when we got there this year, we had to record last year's audit adjustments to move forward. Both of those entities, I believe, have corrected that going forward. I know one of them is actually utilizing an outside source, an outside accountant to handle their books going forward, and I do not anticipate this repeating itself. And then the second one on page 14 related to the use of a debit card for purchases, and that I know has been corrected. The debit card is no longer being used, and the only reason that we have an auditor has a concern about that is that when you use a debit card, it's a point of purchase. There's no approval process to go through. There's no invoice. There's no really supporting documentation for those expenditures. We recommend that everything be paid through a checking account with individual checks. And again, I know that that has been taken care of. The next few pages are management recommendations, and they are just that. They are only recommendations. You can choose to adopt or implement, or you can choose not to, but they're just things that we feel like we wanted to make a point of. So again, these are not findings. There's nothing of great concern here at all, just recommendations for improving efficiencies and so forth with your finance department. Several of these come from the prior year, and I know that they are being worked on. We had a recommendation about providing retirement plan information to the actuary. The actuary gets their information from the bank, which is correct, but you all also maintain a bank account that's part of pooled cash, and so he doesn't get that information because Century Bank is not handling that. It's just a little bit of expenses that flow through that, but to get everything under one roof when he's doing the actuarial evaluation, we just recommend that information be provided to him. We did have a little bit of an issue with inventory, where the fiscal count wasn't completely matching the listing of inventory items. That happens periodically, and I do believe that is being addressed as well. And then we had one recommendation related to the component unit, the Central State Hospital Redevelopment Authority, regarding their annual leave policy, and my understanding is that has already been adopted. And that's listed on page 16. The rest of this document, and I know you're probably saying, oh my gosh, look at all these pages. These are all Governmental Accounting Standard Board pronouncements that are going to be effective for the years going forward. They continually want to change and take a look at things and revamp financial statements and add disclosures, and so we put all of this in here just so you all are aware of what's out there on the horizon. A lot of these won't affect you at all. A few of them may affect you somewhat, but we usually make sure that we talk about these right before they have to be implemented, so that so the finance department is aware of what's out there going forward. And then finally, we include in here a list of some of the continuing education classes that we have that are we hold usually quarterly, that are free for all of our clients. It does count as formal continuing education for reporting purposes for those that have a license. And if any of you all are ever interested, please let Brenda know or Shay know, and we'll be glad to get you on the list. We usually have one session in Macon and one in Atlanta somewhere. And our clients have been real pleased with them, especially since it's free. And then we also issue newsletters on a periodic basis, trying to keep everyone up to date on the continuing changes out there with governmental accounting. We just very much appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve you all. Finance department did a great job. They're ready when we get there, and we don't have to do a lot of audit adjustments and changing things up. Really good job by your finance department. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Will there ever be a point in time where things don't change?
I would probably say no. I mean, they're
It just
constantly,
seems to be a continuous, almost reinvention sometimes,
There is.
renaming. It means the same thing, but now it's called this.
right?
And I just sometimes wonder, is somebody somewhere laughing? Because
probably
we're all
are.
having to go through these hoops and,
Well, I think the reason there are so many changes is that the individuals that are in charge of, the individuals at the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that are the ones that look at all of this and issue new standards are really more, what's the term? They're more academic than in practice. They're not like me, who's in the field every day and actually working with these local governments. They come with it more from an academic standpoint. So I often wonder if they did what I did, would they still want to make these changes? But, you know, a lot of them are for the good, and a lot of them try to clarify things that have been established before. Sometimes you shake your head and wonder why, but for the most part, they're pretty good.
I think you've answered it well. That certainly makes sense when you come from that. Yeah, yeah. When you're not in it, it's a different situation.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lipscomb, for that fine report. We rely heavily on Ms. Brenda Josie and Shay as well, and your cooperation sure is appreciated. Ms. Crawford, could you come on up, please? Also tonight on our awards and presentation, I am pleased to announce that the city of Milledgeville recently earned the Gold Award from the Georgia Association of Water Professionals. The Lamar Ham Water Plant, James Ball Water Plant, and the Water Pollution Control Plant all received this prestigious award. This award means that each plant had 100% permit compliance for the year of 2016. The GAWP Gold Award is a very difficult achievement to attain simply because there's so many factors involved beyond the operator or manager's control. We're very fortunate to have such dedicated and determined employees who constantly remain focused and vigilant in serving our customers and protecting the environment. So, Ms. Crawford? These two gold awards. Congratulations. Thank you so much for the job you guys do.
Yeah.
So you've all received copies of the minutes of the May 9th, 2017 regular council meeting. Are there any corrections? Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Motion carries. Having no old business to consider tonight, we'll move directly into new
We
business.
also need to do the closed session minutes, May 9th closed session minutes.
I'm sorry?
Closed session minute.
What's the date on that?
On May 9th closed session minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll say, you've had a chance to come by and review the minutes of the May 9th closed session minutes. Does anybody have any corrections on those? Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
That motion carries. So, having no new old business considered tonight, we'll move directly into new business. I will ask the clerk to provide a first read of ordinance 1705-010 to adopt the 2018 annual budget.
This is an ordinance to adopt fiscal year 2018 annual operating budget beginning on July 1st, 2017 and ending on June 30th, 2018, to adopt the 5-year capital improvements program, to make the budget available for inspection, to outline the adoption schedule, and for other purposes.
This, at this point in time, I'd like to open the meeting for any questions or comments about the budgeting process. Anyone like to speak in favor of opposition? Hearing none, this is scheduled to come back before council on our July 11th meeting. Is that correct? June 13th meeting, I'm sorry. So I'll now ask the clerk to provide a first read of ordinance 1705-010. I'm sorry, I had this all confused. I'll now ask the clerk to provide a first read of ordinance 01705-009 to allow special use of 320 West Green Street for group residents with 15 residents.
And this is the first reading to conduct the first reading of an ordinance amending the Land Development Code to allow special use of property located at 320 West Green Street. This property is currently owned by Richard Sims and zone SFR1. Applicant desires a special use for group residents with 15 residents.
Now, this is scheduled to come back before council at our July 11th meeting. Moving on, I'll ask the clerk to read Resolution R 1705-015 by caption.
To authorize the city of Milledgeville to apply for a Georgia Power Company Commercial Energy Efficiency Program 2017, to authorize Mayor Gary L. Thor to sign the supplemental terms and conditions and payee designation form.
Having heard the resolution, do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Motion carries. Last on the agenda tonight is Resolution R 1705-016. I'll ask the clerk to read by caption.
To authorize an intergovernmental sales tax agreement with the Baldwin County Board of Commissioners.
So you've heard the resolution. Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Again, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Anything else to come before council tonight? There being no further business to conduct, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Second, hearing no objection, we stand adjourned.